Today I'm going to undertake a 1-hour design challenge. I'm not feeling 100% today, but we'll try and plow through anyway. And what I'm going to be doing is creating a fictional brief. Well, in fact, you can see I've already done this. It's very cheesy. The name, Speedy Wraps and Shine. I think we're just going to call it Speedy Wrap. And it's a fictional car vehicle signage, vinyl wrap and valeting service based in Birmingham in the Midlands in the UK. And my aim here is to create a design that creates 2 of these 3 minimally. If I get time to do all 3, I will. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to record it in 1 take. So the only editing you'll find is when I've had major screw-ups with the presentation delivery of it, or if the software fails. Otherwise, you'll see this at a 1-to-1 speed. The reason I'm doing this is to give you a glimpse in terms of how a seasoned designer like myself will work through this. And we're going to be using Canva as our canvas for this. We're not going to be using any other software. We're going to go everything from creating the logo in about 15 minutes, then creating a flyer, hopefully in another 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then having 20 to 30 minutes to finish up with the website. Now, I've noted I've already spoken for a minute and a half, and so we need to just start wrapping up this introduction. The reason I haven't used Squarespace is just because of the time and complexity for it. I might well do a 1-hour design challenge with Squarespace, or several of them, just so you can see how I work. And one final point as well is, at our studio, we would rarely use Canva for all of these aspects. In fact, the only time we'd use Canva is for the flyer itself. And that's because Canva allows us to really speed things up and rapid prototype our design process. And you know from previous videos that I love to rapid prototype. So let's start with this logo and go back to our very quick and cheesy brief here. So this is just created from ChatGPT from a very small prompt here. I've given it some guidelines in terms of what I'm after. It's also got a 3 personas here as well. That I always like working with personas, and this is a process that we brought into our website blueprint, which is our planning process for all new websites. It gives a breakdown of an example of their customers, what they need, and what they prefer as well. So it just gives us some good work to go with there. So Sarah, for example, has a small plumbing business, and she oversees the logistics by the looks of it, and needs her fleet of vans to be professionally branded. Okay, that's a good example, and with the signage companies I've worked with in the past, that's a go-to client who would come back with returning business for them. No nonsense, straightforward design, clearly displays her business name. Okay, this is where it's got it wrong. If she was looking for a logo for herself, that's fine. We can kind of work with that. What works for her and her business would also work with our signage company. I'm not going to spend 15 minutes refining this brief. Next up, we've got fleet manager. So logistics company by the looks of it. Large fleet of vehicles, need a reliable partner for both branding and valeting service. So again, they're not really providing branding as a service. They're providing the signage itself. David prefers sleek and modern, but you can have no nonsense, sleek and modern all in the same bracket. Where I struggle sometimes is when someone says, I want it modern yet traditional, and I've had that a few times. And those are actually other ends of the spectrum and contradict each other. And that requires more questions to get from the client to find out what they actually mean by that. And finally, let's have a look at Liam's profile here. IT specialist. So he's interested in custom wraps. Again, we'll look at this for his IT firm as well, because this is commercial business to business predominantly. Eye-catching with a bit of flair. Again, you know, this valeting service and signage service can provide for all 3 of these customers. They're not alien to each other, but their logo themselves needs to be clear and to the point. It's quite a playful name. I'm not sure if it's the one I would go for, Speedy Wraps, but I think we'll drop the and shine. I think that's a bit much. So we're going to go with that as our company name, jump over into Canva. And I've actually started out by starting a blank logo template, and that's why we can see some starting logos on the side here. So if I look at signage, and see if we've got any examples here. Again, the way we would normally approach this would be to look online, and an example here is something like Logo Pond. And you can see loads of different concepts. So we often work through with the client, looking at these brand concepts. For example, anything that jumps out to them, then we would open in a new tab, and sometimes we will create a mood board on something really quick and easy like Google Docs or slides, just so we can bring them all together and then start talking through the correlations and connections between each logo they like. One point to note is we never just do a like-for-like swap on here. Sometimes it's frustrating when you see an idea that's absolutely perfect for our client wants, but of course, we've got our integrity as designers to make sure that we steal, don't copy. And the difference I would always say between the two is when we steal a design, we take something, the concept, the kernel of something, and we make it our own. Always evolving, always moving things forward, because it's almost impossible to come up with something that's truly unique. There's always echoes of other designs in just about everything that we do. So therefore, steal is a good approach where you steal and change it to your own, renewing constantly designs. Whilst if you do a like-for-like copy, you'll never progress as a designer, and your reputation could be in tatters if obviously that gets out. So I'd never recommend or condone that approach. The challenge we've got is when you're just starting out and someone asks you to do a logo and you know you can do something better than they've got, but you don't have extensive experience using Adobe Illustrator or in brand concept development, sometimes you've got to say yes to jobs to get experience under your belt. Of course, the trade-off is you probably won't be able to charge as much as an experienced brand designer. And that's where Canva comes in really well. You can use this as a good starting point. So let's have a look at car or van for our logo. So we can start off with something really simple, like this. Problem with something like this is you see them 10 a penny, and they're really popular. So let's just leave that one as one example, go back to design and see what we've got here. Lots of logistics. Again, that one's quite good. I quite like that one, but again, it's more suitable to logistics. This one could work. Again, I could look at making it single color to simplify it as well. So the issue you've got here is these are open source, or not open source, sorry, these are stock illustrations that you are licensed to use as part of the Canva Pro account. And that's something I forgot to mention at the start. This is all based on using Canva Pro, which is roughly $120, $130 a year. And if you're serious about getting into design and you want an entry point, this is probably the best value you'll get. When you compare it to the Adobe Creative Cloud, which is roughly $50 to $60 a month, there's a big difference in costs. Another opportunity is Canva recently purchased the, I was going to say Serif, but it's Affinity now. And if you just look up Affinity Designer, this is a very affordable alternative to Adobe Illustrator that allows you to go into more detail. And if we look at the moment, we've got 50% off on there, and you can see one-time payment of £33.99 here in the UK. Obviously, that'll be adjusted to your currency as well. So that's worth checking out as well. But I'm conscious of time, and I'm nearly 10 minutes in, and we haven't really started our design yet. So I think I'm going to go with a couple more. That one could work quite nicely as well, because it shows speed, but also the kind of the vehicle signage as well that goes on it. So we could certainly try that. Okay. I think I'm going to go for this one. I'm going to keep this logo really simple. But some of the things I'm going to be focused on as we design through are things like white space. So all of these examples here, I've got loads of white space, breathing space around it. And there's two elements of white space that we look at. We're looking at macro white space, which is the space between larger elements. In this case, I would treat the gaps between the edge of the design and the logo itself being the macro white space here. Then we have micro white space, which is the spacing between each of the details. You could argue that this is macro white spacing between the name, the subheading, and the logo. And then the micro white space would be the kerning or the gaps between each letter within the word or name. And that's really important. And there is no hard, fast rule to that. Some people have more of an affinity for it at the starting point, what I call a more natural designer, whilst others can pick it up. It's certainly something that you can learn. And I've learned many, and I've trained many with a technical background to be able to appreciate white space, even if they don't have the full library of creative solutions that a designer would have. They're certainly able to create something and lay it out so it looks professional. And that's what we're looking for here. There have been many times where I've needed to create a logo in about 15, 20 minutes because the client's not really had a budget for a logo redesign, but their existing version just looks like it's from clip art or back from the mid-90s and it looks terrible. I'd much rather spend 15, 20 minutes, throw it in as a added value freebie for the client to earn some goodwill early on. And so that's where I would kind of rely on stock imagery to create the solution for them. But it's a horses for courses. I worked on large branding projects for multinationals, working with a design team overseeing that project. And this is an approach we'd never take for that because it would be way too simplistic. And of course, it's not what our clients would be paying for. But if you're starting out and you're working with local businesses, one-man bands, or micro businesses, then this could be a feasible solution to create value for your clients and solve a problem straight away. Okay, so I'm going to use those as a starting point. I think I'm going to remove that one. Not so keen on that one now. So we've got those three there. Might be able to do something with this one as well. And let's just start reducing the font size now. Start dropping that into place. I think we'll call it Speedy and then vehicle wrapped as the tagline. So let's duplicate this. I always forget it's right there under my nose. Okay. So next up, we need to look at a font. So we want this to be commercial. We want it to not be too creative, even though some of our personas wanted a more creative outcome. In our case, we need to kind of satisfy both options. And also we can see that line in there. So what we're going to try and do is find a font that mirrors that. So something that certainly allows us to go with italic. So for me, it's a case of finding a font that's got lots of different options, whether it's weighting or italic, etc. So if we look at this into one, it doesn't allow italics, and so therefore we need to find that solution. So we've got recommended fonts here, which we can look at. Uploaded fonts, these are ones that I've added manually because they weren't, at least at the time, available within Canva. So this is the first one we found that allows an italic font. But the italic angle is very different to the angle on the vehicle. And this is something we could fix in Adobe Illustrator really easily. We could bring this across and actually tilt that lorry so it's on more of an angle, or at least this section is. In Canva, we're limited to that. So we need to either keep looking for a font or we have to accept that it's never going to be quite so perfect. I'm pretty sure this won't be my best work in terms of creating for this because we've got limited time, and that's usually the main challenge we've got. I think that one's close enough, so we're going to go with good old trusty Lato. I've used Lato many times, especially when Google Fonts first came out. It was one of the first options on Google Fonts. Yeah, I'm not really blown away by this design, but I'm just conscious of time, so I think we're going to go with this. And we'll also look at our brief. Now, does it specify any colors that I need to work within? So although this doesn't really do anything wrong, it's just not very creative. We're heavily reliant on the stock imagery that we've got uploaded. But even when we zoom out, it says exactly what they do. You might have preferred it we went with another one. That's fine, but let's just park that, pun intended, and go with this option here. And I think what we're going to do is put the italics on the subheading as well, just so it just forms more of a uniform outcome. Okay, final thing now is let's have a look at some color options. Dark blue and orange. We can try it. So what I think we might do is just go for the dark blue backdrop. So I'm going to start with the Pixel Haze Navy. Just change it up a little bit. Something like that. Let's try our orange, and this is something we can often twist our client's arms a tiny bit when it comes to color selection, unless they've already got brand guidelines set. So in this example, because we've got no logo, there is no brand guidelines. So I could potentially bring this back to more to a gold color, more towards the yellows, which I think will just give them more flexibility going forward. That's where I'm bringing in my personal tastes as well. Okay, so that's looking quite different already. And let's create an inverted version of that logo now, where we have it on a white background. In fact, we're going to do two inverted versions. This will be on a white background. And we're going to go with the blue content, so we can see a full color, standard white background, great for letterheads or commercial documents. And then the third version, we're going to go for a fully inverted option. I should have just duplicated the one above, save me doing this. And just put it on the yellow background. It looks solid, it looks professional enough, but it's not quite got the polish that we'd be looking for. For me, I'd probably almost certainly just simplify this if I was to bring this into Adobe Illustrator, go for more abstract, less on the nose. But what we often find is lots of our clients like the clear on the nose designs. And in fact, if we go back to our brief, that was what one of our personas wanted, was no nonsense, straightforward. And this is no nonsense, straightforward. It says exactly what the company is, what they do, and who they work for in the terms of like large logistics companies. Okay, now we've got that in place. Let's have a look at our next design. And we're 20 minutes in, so we've got time. And we're going to have a look at creating a flyer. So this time I'm going to choose a design that I'm going to start with, which is, I think, the yellow logo on the blue background. And we're looking at more of a poster flyer type design here. So we're going to have to rely on stock photography. Of course, in their case, they've probably got existing designs that they want to use. Try some other search options. I thought it would be easier to find some examples than this. This one's got 0 signage on the side. Maybe we'll do like a before and after. But I need to get some things in place first, so we're going to create the color. So what I'm going to do this time is just bring in this design across, just for the time being, just so we can get the color into the document colors. And that means we can now delete this, at least for the time being, so we've got that color in place. And also, one thing we could do is just get some inspiration from some pre-existing designs. So again, we can go to design here. There we are. This one, you detailing car wash, which is similar to what we're looking at. So we'll create that one. I don't want to duplicate, actually. I just want to add a blank page again. So ours is looking a little bit bare bones at the moment in comparison. That one's quite a good starting point, and we can change that. Window tinting. Again, that would be a service that we could provide. That looks quite good. Let's have a look if we can find one more design that we could look at. Maybe this one, but it's going to be, yeah, more of a challenge. But what we could look at is actually lorry front and center, and then we could change this backdrop, maybe even add a blur option. But so this one's car rental service. Obviously, we're going to change that. So let's look at bringing in our vehicle wrap design into this option here. And start changing some of the photos over before we start worrying about the content itself. Start off with, I'm going to replace the background to see how we're looking for that. It's doing too much. It's not really, we're not getting what we want from that. So one thing we can do is actually remove that one, and we get a side-on shot of a lorry bed. what we can do now is use the background remover and see if we can get that down to the lorry. And it's looking like it's floating there at the moment. Because the angle of this slope here is different to the lorry itself. And we can see here that's going straight across there. So we're losing that aspect for it. So we could try something like this, where we're bringing the background back into it. And we could look at using a gradient to divide the two. So we've got the road in here. Again, Photoshop, I'd be flying through this bit, but we don't have Photoshop, so I'm just going to try and get them aligned roughly. But I want to get rid of that green there, so the grass doesn't really help. So I'm just aligning it and now putting it in there. And we can see it's lost a little bit at the back there, but at least now we've got some of that roadway in place. And we just need to move it back a tiny bit. So instead of just moving it backwards, I'm going to enlarge it to it overlaps the image so I can bring it more into shot. But we're going to get rid of this background photo now. And I want something that's more in line with how this works. So we can go with sky. And I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. Just move that behind. I'm not going to worry about that floating at the moment. Try and blend this in now here as well. Now that won't work without distorting it. Yeah, it'll work. We can look at though using a solid color. You get that guy to the back. Okay, it's getting there slowly. Hopefully you can see kind of what I'm trying to do here as well. Let's go to edit this image, go to adjustments. I'm going to bring up the saturation and the vibrance slightly, but we're going to bring down the brightness. Well, okay. One thing I want to do now is to look at getting this section to blend. It's actually more difficult to do this on Canva than it would be on something like Adobe Photoshop. We've got to go to elements here and look for gradient. This time we're going to look for graphics. And what we're after is a gradient that we can change the color of. So sometimes I've got to go through a few of these to see if we've got one. where we can change that color. This was actually really close, so we could get away with this one. We'll rotate it round. And drop it behind the lorry. There's a more natural blend now between those two areas. And we can build that up. Still doesn't get around the issue of that flying in midair there. But now, because we've got that gradient over it, it's probably hiding some of the imperfections. The fact that the drop shadow is going to be closer to the lorry. We're not going to see that. And so that's where we've managed to get away with that now. And having this angle in here, okay, it may not be perfect, but I think, again, we just about get away with it. But the other option is we go with a different gradient color here again. Go with the black, for example. Drop it behind the lorry. It's just a case of playing around until we get a solution that works. So that being a black gradient looks too strong. This is where we can go to the transparency option and bring it right back. Of course, we want to bring it behind the content. This layer here with the blue needs to go back behind the icons as well. Just having a play around now with different layers. Getting them to fit. But now when I start putting that darker color there, you can see it starts to work a bit better. Another option we've got is we can actually go more dramatic and see how that works. Nope, don't like that at all. Okay, not perfect, but we've been able to adjust something that worked well in something different, but looks better here. And I think what we're going to do now is just use this content, and we're going to cheat our content here. And get rid of the text I don't want. I'm going to delete these sections now I don't want. It's a really cheesy statement. I don't think there's any of the content there we want either. I'm going to jump across to ChatGPT and just get that to create me. This is terrible, but we'll go with it. Okay. Okay, so we've got a challenge here with the clouds messing up this. We'll have a look at that in just a moment. Okay, there. One thing we can do here is just go to the guides. You can see there's the main page guides there, left and right. And the reason I'm doing this is we can now set this to central alignment by just toggling through that. And now we can see that set to the middle. We can then just choose that $300, put it in bold, and we can bring in our brand color back into that as well. We've got our 4 tabs here. Just put a fictional website address in there. We could bring a QR code in if we want to as well. But I'm just going to keep it really simple for that. So we're getting most of it in place. We can, I think we're going to double down on the fact that this lorry's empty backdrop, and or maybe we can just bring an arrow in. Go to element. Arrows are a great way of creating that visual hook that ties people to look at something that you want to show them. It's been tried and tested down the years, and there's still very few things that are better. Change that to yellow arrow. Hopefully that's still clear enough. I could cheat here and double it up and change this to our navy blue. Have the yellow overlapping it, so then we've always got that fake border around it, or the drop shadow effect on the arrow. So I think I'll go with that as well. And we're going to edit the image, adjust, and we're going to bring the brightness up a tiny bit. Or we can just focus on the white colors. There, we want that, the whites on this lorry to really pop, and maybe take it a step further and take the black tones and make them darker as well. So we're increasing we're separating the black colors from the white colors so that there's a higher contrast. And I often find that's better than just working on the contrast itself. Okay, so we've got 4 icons here. Actually, just taking that away. I think that's better. But I think there's one more thing we can do here. Let's just take this blue line here and bring it up closer, and maybe just drop the transparency a tiny bit. and make sure it's behind those tabs, which I don't think it is at the moment. There we go. That's one of the downsides when we're working with gradients and multiple layers, is there's a little bit of fiddling about just to get them to work correctly. And I think this gradient here is working fine, but I'm just going to move it back. And I'm going to darken this color here, because we don't need to worry so much about the road now, the direction that we've taken it. Somewhere in between the two, I think it's going to be about spot on. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. There's a bit more contrast now, and that's looking better. That's looking better, isn't it? The challenge we've got here is the angle the lorry's on. Whatever we do with this text, it's never going to look quite right in that position. So I don't think that works. Again, in Photoshop, we can adjust it and distort that text so it looks like it's planted on the side of the lorry. But as this is a Canva only tutorial, I don't want to do that. We could go with something simple and abstract, maybe. So we see this is white image and we can't actually do anything with the colors. So this is where I use the duotone effect. And then I change the colors. I'm not happy with that. I think something like this might work. Every part of me wants to get into Photoshop and fix this and get it perfect. But that kind of defeats the object of this workshop. That could work. Again, we'll go in and use the duotone effect to get it on brand color-wise. Doesn't matter which color you choose here, because we're going to choose our brand colors anyway. Okay, not perfect, but I think that's what we go with. It just gives the effect that you can design on here. What I'd love to do is just draw a shape on here and then have the lined effect going through on the side of that vehicle, so it's very obvious what you actually design. But we'll go with that as a trade-off. Now we need to find some icons to go in this section here. And we're looking for icons that fit the overall style. This is one thing I really like about Canva. It's so easy to get these icons so we can make our designs just look uniform. Of course, if budget was no issue, we get an illustrator to create a unique icon set. We have that skill set in-house, and that's often what we do. But likewise, when I'm putting together presentations or design work or even social media posts for clients, sometimes creating an icon set for a low-budget project is overkill, and you end up losing money on the project. So there's nothing wrong with using Canva again in these examples. Okay. One more step. I think we need to do something with this here. So I'm going to change that from lift effect to a shadow effect. And we're going to bring in our dark background color. Just so that text is clearer over top of the clouds. And we could darken this section once more. Another option we could, and I would normally duplicate it at this point just to see how it works. So we've got the two options alongside each other. So I think we come a long way from that design there. We've got a flyer that works. It's not my best work, but it's close enough for an example in terms of what I can put together in an hour. And let's go to the duotone effect. And we could tweak this. Get colors from those icons there. So we've got the original, we've got the adjusted one, which has got the color overlay now on the clouds. And we could tweak that effect so it's maybe a tiny bit lighter. There's an issue here that we need to fix, but we'll just go with that now, the starting point. Okay, final step is our website. Now you might be thinking I've left myself not enough time. We're 52 minutes into a 1 hour challenge. And you might be right. Let's just see how we get on with this final bit. So Canva has a very limiting web design toolkit. It's nowhere near in the same league as website builders like Squarespace. But if we're looking to create a quick and easy logo design to get us started, then quick and easy website design to get us up and running, then this is where it can be quite good. I don't use it heavily, I'll be honest, but in a 1 hour challenge, there's no way we'd be able to get Squarespace up and running. I pride myself on my speed on using Squarespace and other website builders, but that would be a bridge too far. So let's get our cloud backdrop in place. And let's change this now to, I bring these in. So this is where I'm holding Shift and selecting all of these elements that we've already put in place. I'm going to copy them with Control C or Command C. But actually what I'll do first is I'll group them together So we know that that's not going to change now when we bring it across to the website. Paste them in place. And we can look at doing some sort of backdrop behind them as well. So let's go to Elements and go to Shape. This is where I'm going to bring in a navy section. Move it to the back. Now we've brought the color in, so it's on our document color palette. That means we can change the text at the top accordingly, go with a more traditional header section, and I think we could put like anchor links or something to bring them in. I don't think we'll have time to lay that out in this challenge, but that's definitely something, well, I'm pretty sure that's something we can do. Next up, I'm going to bring this text in. Paste that in place. There we go. I can bring that now behind these tabs, but overlapping that divide there, so we can get that cutout effect where our lorry is on that backdrop, but it's also not really. This is where we could potentially look at taking that arrow. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that one. Undo that. Zoom in. I want to get both of those arrow blocks, group them together so they'll stick together when we bring them across. Just going to rotate that around, and we're going to put in our main heading or our subheading there. And let's go back. This time, instead of having that at the top, we're going to have it on this side section here. Doesn't need to be quite so large for our website. We can see the frame here is huge. We don't need it to be that big. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm just going to bring the frame in just so we can select other elements around it that much easier. If I add page, we can see it joins automatically. And that's where we could start building out the page content then. For example, about us information, etc. So we've got a few more minutes left, so let's see what we can do. Just going to increase the line spacing a little bit to give it a bit more breathing space on that heading. And now let's head into ChatGPT once more. Okay, so I'm going to add a text block, this time body text, and I'm going to drop that content in as it is. We're going to change it back to Lato, but this time we're going to have this normal weighting on it. And we've got a couple of choices here. So for me, I think we've got a little bit of empty space here that we could work with. I'm going to remove that effect. Change that back to none. We can see the text is white, so we need to take that back to our navy. And I'm going to keep the navy color palette throughout. So instead of having black text, I'm going to go with that deep blue. So it ties in with our designs. And what we're going to do now is align this text to the left. Same with this heading. We're going to remove the italic option. Because having the text box going across almost the entirety of our website, it can be a bit jarring and just harder to read everything. So what I tend to prefer to do is actually go with narrow widths. So if we either had it centrally aligned and then with nice white space around either side of it, or in this case, I'm going to go to the left-hand side of this block, and instead we're going to bring in an image, probably in a circle, on the right hand side. So I'm going to go to frame, drop our frame in place, and then we'll just find a stock photo. So we can see we've just hit the hour mark now. So we'll find a photo and then we're going to wrap this up. So we'll go for a car cleaning service. Have the photo there. There's more I can put into this website, and also I probably wouldn't even use Canva for this design. I would probably build this out on a full website. But hopefully you've seen how we can get things moving really quickly. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't use Canva for website mockups. So if you're looking to create a design to send over to the client before bringing it into a more sophisticated, more able website builder like Squarespace or Wix, then this can be a good solution for you. But just to quickly recap, in 1 hour, we created this logo. Not my best, as I said, but it's good enough considering we only had 10 to 15 minutes to put that together. Then, just zoom out a little bit, we created our flyer off the top of it. We got 2 different versions, one with the more vibrant backdrop, one with the more branded version where we've got the clouds faded out a little bit as well, so the text is easier to read. It would be a case of between you and your client then to decide which one to go for. And then the final one, we created a very, very simple starting point for a website that uses some nice effects like the overlap of the image, overlapping the header. We've got our heading 1, which is really impactful. We've got a heading 2 tying in. And then we've got a welcome paragraph. And this is looking a little bit tight here, so I would just probably increase the line spacing, make it easier for someone to read as they're going through. And then we've got the option then potentially to signpost off to different areas of our site, to bring in a testimonial into this section below. And I could do that, but I've run out of time today. But hopefully you get an idea there of how I kind of work through quick turnaround projects. At this point, I'd like to hear your opinions. Do you want me to create more of these long form videos? I know I take a little bit longer. They're not as polished as the other videos that I create, which are 10 to 15 minutes, where I make sure that you don't see the full experience, you see the key points. Whilst with this one, it's an idea to show you how my brain works, or not in today's case, as I'm taking you through a project. As I said, this is never going to be my best work because of the time frames provided and the software I'm using, but we all have to start somewhere. And if you're just starting out, then Canva is probably one of the best platforms that you can learn your design fundamentals and actually provide something that's professional that your clients could use. If you're eager to find out more about how I build websites and how I design, we've got 2 communities over on School with a K, and I've left some information in the description. Our free community focuses on website builders and how you can get the most from them. Loads of tutorials like this one, whilst our premium community is more about us coaching you through it as a group. So we have weekly catch-ups where you can ask us any questions and we can guide you through projects that you're working on. Both options are available, neither are mandatory, but it would be great to see more of you. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time.